One of the rallying cries during the latest teacher strike was heard, "Flip the board." That came to fruition this week as the teachers union-backed candidates won the majority of the school board for the first time in years. Union-endorsed candidates in DPS included Tay Anderson, Brad Laurvick, and Scott Balderman. Eric, to have this kind of a teacher union-backed majority in DPS, we haven't seen this for a long time. What effect do you think it's going to make on recent reforms in charter schools in Denver?
Well, I think we will tell over time, but it will have an impact. I mean, this board did flip, and probably a few people, voters flipped them off, if you will, in the process. What I've found interesting about this election was how not close it was. I mean, this was a decisive, conclusive election result. As somebody who is identified with the reform movement, who's been involved in charter schools, I think you have to take it to heart. And I think the people I talk to who I'm aligned with on this do take it to heart. I think the reform movement, quote unquote, in Denver had a good 15 or 20-year run, dating back to Michael Bennett's time as superintendent. Nothing lasts forever. Pendulums do swing. This one was due to swing. It swung hard. Perhaps the reform movement, again, in quotation marks, had grown somewhat tired, somewhat entrenched, some would argue somewhat insular. Now let some other people get up to bat and take a whack at it. If their agenda is to bridge the divide, where there is definitely a divide in this city around education issues, God bless them. If their agenda is to get more money into classrooms and reduce administrative bloat, God bless them, and they will find a lot of support. If their agenda is to limit people's choices and reduce choices, particularly for black and brown and impoverished families in really lousy schools, I think they will have a fight on their hands. Ditto if they try to reduce accountability mechanisms. But it's interesting times in Denver, and there's probably a silver lining there.
Josh, what do you think are the key issues that this new majority would like to see accomplished?
I think that, well, let me just say first that the impact of the Denver teachers strike not only impacted Denver, but we saw teachers union endorsed candidates, 2 seats were won in Aurora, 3 seats in Douglas County. So this had ripple effects far beyond Denver. I would also say that, Eric mentioned that the reform movement had a good run. I would argue that it actually wasn't a good run. The reform movement led to schools in neighborhoods being closed down. It's not much of a choice when your school in your neighborhood gets closed down. So when we talk about issues front and center, first and foremost, it's keeping our neighborhood schools up and running and open. It's stopping the privatization of our schools, and it's making sure that we can retain good educators in our city.
Patty, in Tay Anderson, I believe we have the youngest DPS board member, so there's clearly some new fresh blood, very fresh in this case. What do you expect to see from this new board?
Well, certainly with Tay, we see the start of a long political career, I think. And he's going to be very interesting. I'm going to take, maybe it was time for the swing back for the pendulum, but I think it was the snow day fiasco the week before had the last push at the people like, we're going to get our phone calls on time. So I would say the new board members, first thing they should do is tackle how to decide snow days and how to let people know, because those kinds of things really affect parents and kids on a very immediate level.
David, as Josh mentioned, this was not the only county where teachers union-backed candidates did well. I think out of all, it was, 14 of 16 or 15 of 16 candidates throughout the metro area won. What does this mean for reforms or charters across the metro area?
Well, it means over the last years, the achievement gap between the Denver public schools and the rest of the state, and Denver used to be very far below the state average, they really closed that gap. But now we'll, I think, move to reverse and widen the gap. According to the union, if you say that a school is failing, that's like saying the community is failing. I think that's ridiculous. If a restaurant fails because it has bad food and people don't want to go there, then maybe you need to change the management of the restaurant and get some new staff. It doesn't mean the community failed. This is a new board that says no new charter schools, don't measure whether students are learning to read, and we should do student discipline according to racial quotas rather than actually individual student behavior. So it will at least help to solve the housing crunch in Denver, because families that want quality education will begin to move elsewhere.
Just another issue in Colorado that we can all agree on.